Ash, we need to talk. It's not what you think.
Really? Then whose hickey did you forget to cover today?
The hickey on my wife's neck wasn't mine. I noticed it as Brielle adjusted her silk scarf in the gallery's dim lighting, the purple mark peeking out like a guilty secret. She was late again, claiming another artistic breakthrough had kept her in the studio until midnight. The same studio I'd installed with security cameras 3 months ago, cameras that showed her leaving at 6:30 sharp. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Forgot your choker, darling?" I asked, not looking up from the inventory sheets scattered across my desk. Brielle's hand flew to her neck, fingers dancing nervously over the scarf. "What's that supposed to mean, Asher?" "Nothing at all." I finally met her eyes, keeping my expression neutral. After 15 years of marriage and 10 years running this gallery together, I'd mastered the art of appearing oblivious. "Just noticed you've been wearing scarves a lot lately. Very artistic." She relaxed, that familiar condescending smile spreading across her face. "You wouldn't understand the aesthetic choices I make. Your idea of fashion is wearing the same black sweater 3 days in a row." I chuckled, playing the part of the hapless husband she expected. "Guilty as charged. How was the studio session? Productive?" "Incredibly." She moved closer, trailing her fingers along the edge of my desk. "I'm working on something revolutionary, a series about hidden truths and exposed vulnerabilities. Very raw, very honest. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Sounds fascinating. Can't wait to see it." Her Brielle kissed my forehead, her perfume mixing with an unfamiliar cologne that clung to her clothes. "You're sweet, Ash, but you know how I feel about showing work before it's ready." After she left for her evening yoga class, I sat alone in the gallery, surrounded by the carefully curated collection of contemporary art that had become our life's work. The space was beautiful. Exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, track lighting that could make a grocery list look profound. But tonight, it felt like a mausoleum. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app connected to our home system. The cameras I'd installed weren't just in the studio. They were everywhere Brielle thought she had privacy. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but something had been off for months. The footage from this afternoon made everything clear. Brielle, naked and writhing beneath a man who definitely wasn't me. A man I recognized immediately, Lucian Hart, her ex-boyfriend from college, now a wealthy art collector with galleries in 3 cities. The same Lucien who'd been coincidentally appearing at our events, buying pieces from emerging artists, charming everyone with his European sophistication and family money. I watched them together, my wife of 15 years and the man she'd claimed was ancient history. The timestamp showed they'd been in our bed for 2 hours, in our home, while I was across town meeting with potential investors for the gallery expansion. My hands didn't shake as I saved the video files to my personal cloud storage. My heart didn't race. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating settle into my chest, like ice forming on a still pond. Brielle wanted to create art about hidden truths and exposed vulnerabilities. I was about to give her all the inspiration she could handle. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to Eli Morrison, my oldest friend and the owner of a private security firm. If Brielle and Lucian wanted to play games, they'd discover I was much better at strategy than they'd ever imagined. The gallery's silence was broken only by the soft clicking of keys as I planned my first move. Outside, the city hummed with its usual evening energy, but inside these walls, everything had changed. My marriage was over. I'd known that the moment I saw that hickey. But the story was far from finished. I smiled as I hit send on the email. Brielle thought I was predictable, boring, easily manipulated. She was about to learn that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous. Eli Morrison looked like Central Casting's idea of an ex-cop turned private investigator. Graying hair, weathered face, and eyes that missed nothing. We sat in his downtown office the next morning, the smell of strong coffee mixing with the lingering scent of cigarettes he'd quit 5 years ago. "Jesus, Ash." He leaned back in his chair after watching the video files on his tablet. "How long has this been going on?" "Best guess? 3 months. That's when Lucien started showing up at gallery events again." I sipped my coffee, surprised by how calm I felt. "Remember him from Brielle's art school days? Rich boy with the entitled attitude. Yeah, I remember. Thought he moved to Europe." "He did. Made a fortune in tech. Then came back to play art patron." Brielle claimed she barely remembered him when he first appeared at our spring showing. Eli scrolled through the photos I'd compiled. Lucien at gallery openings, restaurant receipts from places I'd never been, credit card charges for lingerie I'd never seen Brielle wear. "You've been busy." I'm methodical. It's why the gallery succeeds. I pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. Lucien's not just screwing my wife. He's been systematically undermining my business relationships. 3 major collectors have pulled their accounts in the past 2 months. All of them started working with galleries in Lucien's network instead. That's elaborate. It gets better. Remember Sienna Walsh, our gallery assistant? The redhead with the attitude? She's been feeding Lucien information about our client lists, upcoming acquisitions, financial status. I found the email trail yesterday. I slid printouts across his desk. He's paying her $5,000 a month to sabotage us from the inside. Eli whistled low. So this isn't just an affair. It's a coordinated attack on your livelihood. Exactly. Lucien wants Brielle, but he also wants to destroy what we built together. Probably figures if he ruins the gallery, she'll have no choice but to depend on him financially. What do you want from me? I leaned forward. I want to return the favor, but carefully, legally, and with maximum public humiliation. Lucien's reputation is everything in the art world. His credibility with collectors, his social standing, his sense of superiority. That's where we hit him. And Brielle. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I pulled out my phone and showed him a text thread. Look at this. The messages were from last night, between Brielle and her best friend Jasper. Brielle. Asher's so clueless. I could probably bring Lucien home for dinner and he'd just ask about wine pairings. Jasper. You're terrible, but also hilarious. How long are you going to keep this up? Brielle. Until I'm ready to leave. Lucien's setting up a studio for me in his new building. Once that's finished, I'll file for divorce and take half of everything. Jasper. What about the gallery? Brielle. What about it? I'm the artistic vision. Asher's just the business guy. I can rebuild anywhere. Eli read the messages twice. She's planning to take you for everything. Not if I move first. I stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked the busy street below. I want to expose them both, publicly and completely, but I want it to look like they destroyed themselves. That's ambitious. I've got advantages they don't know about. Sienna thinks she's been careful, but I've been monitoring her computer activity for weeks. Lucien thinks he's untouchable because of his money and connections, and Brielle thinks I'm too nice, too passive to fight back. Eli grinned. They're about to learn otherwise. Here's what I'm thinking. I returned to my chair and pulled out a notebook filled with detailed plans. Next week is the Downtown Arts Festival. Lucien's hosting a private collectors event at his new gallery space. Half the city's art scene will be there, including all the people whose opinions matter in our world. You want to crash the party? Better. I want to give them a show they'll never forget. But first, we need to gather more evidence. I want documentation of every lie, every betrayal, every underhanded move they've made. Eli opened his laptop. What kind of timeline are we looking at? 2 weeks. The festival runs for 4 days, but Lucien's event is Saturday night. That gives us time to set everything up properly. And if they figure out what you're doing, I smiled, feeling that cold calculation settle deeper into my chest. They won't. Brielle thinks she knows me, but she's only ever seen the version of myself I wanted her to see. The accommodating husband, the supportive partner, the guy who avoids confrontation, and the real you. The real me built a successful gallery from nothing, negotiates million-dollar art deals, and never forgets a slight. I gathered my papers and stood. The real me is about to remind everyone why you don't underestimate the quiet ones. As I left Eli's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Brielle. Working late again tonight? Don't wait up. I typed back, no problem, I'll be working late too. For the first time in months, that was completely true. The Rusty Anchor was the kind of dive bar that serious artists pretended to avoid but secretly loved. Dim lighting, cheap drinks, and conversations that stayed private. Rhea Blackwood had been tending bar there for 6 years, ever since her own gallery dreams had crashed against the reality of rent payments and student loans. She was also my ex-girlfriend from college, though we'd managed to maintain a friendship that had survived both my marriage and her series of increasingly dramatic relationships. You look like shit, she said, as I slid onto a bar stool Thursday evening. Thanks. That's exactly what my ego needed to hear. Rhea poured me a whiskey without asking. Let me guess. Brielle's latest artistic phase is wearing you down. Something like that. I sipped the drink, feeling the burn settle into my chest. What do you hear about Lucien Hart these days? Her expression shifted, becoming more alert. Why? Professional curiosity. He's been making moves in the local scene. Professional curiosity, my ass. She leaned against the bar. Lucien's been in here 3 times this week, usually around midnight, usually drunk, and usually bragging about his conquests. What kind of conquests? The kind where he talks about winning back the artist and showing some small-town gallery owner how the big leagues work. She studied my face. Ash, please tell me you're not as clueless as he thinks you are. What else has he said? Rhea glanced around, then leaned closer. Tuesday night, he was here with some collector friends from New York. Started talking about how he was liberating a talented sculptor from a marriage that was holding her back. Said the husband was so boring that she'd practically thrown herself at him. The whiskey turned bitter in my mouth. Anything else? He mentioned something about a business deal. Said he was going to clear the local competition and set up his girlfriend in a proper studio space. She straightened up. Ash, if this is about what I think it's about, it's exactly about what you think it's about. Shit. She poured herself a shot and knocked it back. How long have you known? Officially, since yesterday. Unofficially, I've suspected for months. What are you going to do? I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken that afternoon. Sienna Walsh, sitting in a coffee shop across from Lucienne, sliding a manila envelope across the table. I'm going to give them enough rope to hang themselves. That's Sienna, right? Your gallery assistant? Former gallery assistant. She just doesn't know it yet. I finished my whiskey. Rhea, I need a favor. Name it. Lucienne's hosting a collector's event next Saturday. Private party, invitation only, all the important people in the local art scene. I need to know who's going, what the setup looks like, and how security is arranged. You planning to crash? I'm planning to make an entrance they'll never forget. I left money on the bar and stood. Can you help? Honey, after what that pretentious asshole said about you, I'll help you burn his whole world down. As I walked back to my car, my phone rang. Eli's name appeared on the screen. Tell me you have good news, I answered. Better than good. I've been digging into Lucien's business dealings. Turns out our boy has some interesting financial arrangements. Such as? 3 of his galleries are leveraged to the hilt. He's been using his family money to maintain the appearance of success, but the actual businesses are hemorrhaging cash. And get this, he's been selling authentication certificates for pieces that haven't been properly verified. That's fraud. It's fraud if anyone can prove it, but it's also a reputation destroyer if the right people start asking questions. I smiled as I unlocked my car. What kind of people? The kind who'll be at his collector's event next Saturday. I've got a friend who works for the Art Authentication Board. She owes me a favor. This keeps getting better. There's more. I've been monitoring Sienna's communications. She's not just feeding Lucian information about your business. She's been bad-mouthing you to other gallery owners, spreading rumors about your financial stability and professional ethics. Any proof? Emails, text messages, recorded phone calls. She's been busy. I sat in my car, engine running, watching the city lights blur past the windshield. Everything was falling into place with an almost artistic precision. Eli, how do you feel about attending a gallery opening? I thought you said it was invitation only. It is, but I know someone who can get us in. I thought about Rhea's offer to help burn Lucian's world down, and I think it's time to show the art world what real performance art looks like. What do you need me to do? Bring cameras, lots of cameras, and maybe brush up on your knowledge of art authentication procedures. This is going to be interesting. Interesting is one word for it. I pulled out of the parking space and headed home, where Brielle was probably getting ready for another late studio session. I prefer to think of it as educational. When I arrived home, the house was dark, except for a light in our bedroom. I could hear Brielle on the phone, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she thought she was being clever. No, he doesn't suspect anything, she was saying. Asher's too wrapped up in his little business world to notice what's happening right in front of him. I stood in the hallway, listening. The gallery's worth at least $2 million, maybe more with the right buyer. Once I file for divorce, I'll get half of everything, plus alimony since I've been supporting his career for 15 years. A pause. Of course I love you, Lucian. Why do you think I'm going through all this trouble? But we have to be smart about it. If we move too fast, he might actually fight back. Another pause, then laughter. Asher? Fight back? That's hilarious. The man apologizes when other people bump into him. I smiled in the darkness. She was right about one thing. I did apologize a lot, but she was about to learn the difference between courtesy and weakness. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made the city feel electric with possibility. I sat in my gallery office, surrounded by the evidence of 15 years of careful work, awards, photographs with famous artists, newspaper clippings documenting our success. By this time next week, half of it might be gone, divided up in divorce proceedings. Unless I moved first. Sienna arrived at 9:30, her usual half-hour late, carrying coffee and wearing the kind of self-satisfied expression that suggested she thought she was getting away with something. "Morning, Asher," she said, settling at her desk near the gallery's front entrance. "Brielle mentioned you've been working late a lot this week." The business doesn't run itself. I didn't look up from my computer screen, where I was reviewing the email trail between Sienna and Lucian. Speaking of which, we need to discuss the Morrison account. Sienna's typing paused. The Morrison account was one of our biggest clients, a tech executive who'd been building a contemporary art collection for the past 3 years. It was also completely fictional, a test I'd created to see how quickly information would leak to Lucian. "What about it?" she asked. "He's considering a major purchase, 7 figures, potentially, but he wants complete discretion until the deal is finalized." I finally looked up, meeting her eyes. "I'm only telling you because I need you to clear your schedule next week. This could be huge for us." I watched her process the information, practically seeing the dollar signs reflecting in her pupils. "What kind of piece is he looking at?" "A Rothko? Estate sale? Private collection? Very hush-hush." I turned back to my computer. "I'll need you to handle the authentication paperwork and coordinate with the insurance company." "Of course. Whatever you need." "Great. I'll have the details ready Monday morning." As soon as Sienna stepped out for her coffee break, I called Eli. "The bait is set," I told him. "How long do you think it'll take for Lucian to hear about the fictional Rothko deal?" "With Sienna? I'd say 2 hours, maximum." "Perfect. Is your friend from the authentication board ready?" "Margaret's been looking forward to this all week. Turns out she's had suspicions about Lucian's certificates for months, but hasn't had enough evidence to move forward. She will after tomorrow night." I hung up and opened my laptop, pulling up the presentation I'd been working on for the past 3 days. 47 slides, each one documenting a different aspect of Lucien and Brielle's betrayal. Photos, emails, financial records, authentication discrepancies. Everything organized with the same attention to detail I brought to gallery exhibitions. The difference was, this exhibition would only have an audience of one night, and its subjects wouldn't be willing participants. My phone buzzed with a text from Ria. "Got your invitations sorted. You're listed as my +1. Security is minimal. Lucian's more worried about keeping out riffraff than actual troublemakers." I typed back, "Perfect. What time?" "Event starts at 7. Prime humiliation time would be around 9, when everyone's had enough wine to be chatty, but not enough to be sloppy. See you at 8:30. The gallery's front door chimed, and I looked up to see Jasper Wilde entering with his usual dramatic flair. Brielle's best friend since art school, Jasper was the kind of person who treated every conversation like a performance and every outfit like a costume. Today he was wearing a vintage velvet jacket and carrying a leather messenger bag that probably cost more than most people's rent. "Asher, darling," he said, air-kissing in my general direction. "How are you holding up?" "Holding up? Oh, Brielle mentioned you've been stressed about the business lately. All those long hours, the financial pressures." He perched on the edge of my desk. "She's worried about you." I almost laughed. "That's sweet of her." "She's thinking about planning a surprise getaway for you two. Somewhere relaxing, maybe that little place in Vermont you went to for your anniversary a few years ago." "Sounds wonderful." I saved my work and closed the laptop. "When is she thinking?" "Next month, maybe? After the arts festival craziness fades down?" Jasper's smile was just a little too bright. "You know how much she loves you, right? Sometimes I think she doesn't say it enough, but she really does. I know exactly how much Brielle loves me." Something in my tone must have registered because Jasper's expression shifted slightly. "Well, anyway, I should run. Just wanted to check in." After he left, I sat back in my chair and considered the conversation. Brielle was already planning damage control, probably sensing that something was off, even if she couldn't identify what. The surprise getaway would give her time to figure out her next move, maybe even file for divorce while I was distracted by thoughts of reconciliation. Too bad I was going to end this tomorrow night. I spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing security footage from the gallery's cameras, documenting every time Sienna had accessed client files, every phone call she'd made from her desk, every moment she'd thought she was unobserved. The evidence was overwhelming, but I wanted to be thorough. At 5 o'clock, I locked up the gallery and drove home. Brielle's car was already in the driveway, which was unusual. She typically spent Friday evenings at networking events, that I now knew were actually extended sessions with Lucian. I found her in the kitchen, cooking dinner with unusual enthusiasm. "Hey," she said, kissing my cheek. "I thought we could have a quiet evening together, just the two of us." "That sounds nice." I opened a bottle of wine, pouring 2 glasses. What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to spend time with my husband? She stirred something that smelled like her grandmother's pasta sauce, the one she only made for special occasions or when she felt guilty about something. Of course not. I handed her a glass. How was the studio today? Productive. I'm really close to finishing the new series. She avoided my eyes. Actually, I've been thinking about what comes next. Oh? Maybe it's time for a change. New inspiration, new environment. She sipped her wine. What would you think about relocating? Somewhere with a bigger art scene, more opportunities? You mean like New York? Maybe. Or Los Angeles. Somewhere we could both grow professionally. I nodded thoughtfully, as if I were actually considering uprooting our entire life to accommodate her affair. That's a big decision. I know, but I think we've gotten comfortable here. Maybe too comfortable. She turned to face me fully. When's the last time either of us felt truly excited about our work? I feel excited about my work every day. Really? Her tone carried a hint of the condescension I'd grown to recognize. When's the last time you discovered a new artist? When's the last time you took a real risk? I'm taking one tomorrow night. What do you mean? I'm going to Lucian Hart's collector event. Thought it might be good for networking. Brielle went very still. You weren't invited. Ria got me in as her guest. Should be interesting to see what the competition is doing. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because... She struggled for a moment. Because Lucien doesn't like you. He thinks you're small-time, provincial. He might cause a scene. Let him. I can handle Lucian Hart. Brielle turned back to the stove, her shoulders tense. Sometimes I think you don't understand how this world really works, Ash. It's not just about talent or hard work. It's about connections, reputation, knowing the right people. You're absolutely right, I said. It's amazing what people will do to protect their reputation. She glanced at me sharply, but I kept my expression neutral. Tomorrow night, she'd discover exactly what I meant. Saturday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the black tie that Brielle had given me for our 10th anniversary. She'd already left for a pre-event dinner with collectors, which I knew meant a final strategy session with Lucian. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. Everything's in place. Margaret's already at the venue, and I've got the camera equipment ready. I typed back, "See you at 9." The drive to Lucian's gallery took 15 minutes through downtown traffic. The building was a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed steel and floor-to-ceiling windows. Valet parking, red carpet, photographers. Lucian had spared no expense in making his event look important. I found Ria near the entrance, wearing a black dress that managed to look both elegant and dangerous. "You clean up nice," she said, linking her arm through mine. "Ready to burn some bridges?" "I'm ready to expose some frauds." The gallery space was impressive, I had to admit. 3 floors of carefully curated contemporary pieces, dramatic lighting, servers circulating with champagne and canapes. The guest list read like a who's who of the regional art world. Collectors, critics, museum directors, and artists whose work commanded 6-figure prices. And there, holding court near a massive abstract sculpture, was Lucian Hart himself. He looked exactly like what he was. Old money trying to buy cultural relevance. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of confident smile that came from never having to worry about consequences. He was surrounded by admirers, including several collectors who used to work exclusively with my gallery. "There's your wife," Ria murmured. Brielle stood at Lucian's side, wearing a red dress I'd never seen before and jewelry that definitely hadn't come from my credit card. She was playing the part of the sophisticated artist, discussing technique and inspiration with the kind of passion she used to reserve for our private conversations. "She looks happy," I observed. "She looks like she's about to get a very unpleasant surprise." I spotted Sienna near the bar, talking animatedly with a man I recognized as a prominent collector from Boston. No doubt sharing insider information about gallery operations and upcoming acquisitions. "Showtime," I said, pulling out my phone. The presentation I'd prepared was loaded and ready to go. All I needed was access to the gallery's projection system and a captive audience. Eli appeared at my elbow, carrying a leather messenger bag that looked innocent but contained enough recording equipment to document everything that was about to happen. "Margaret's identified at least 6 pieces with questionable authentication," he said quietly. "She's ready to make it official whenever you give the signal." "Let's get closer first. I want to hear what they're saying." We worked our way through the crowd, using the natural flow of conversation to position ourselves near Lucien's group. Brielle was telling a story about her latest sculpture series, the one about hidden truths and exposed vulnerabilities. Art should reveal what people try to hide, she was saying. It should make viewers uncomfortable, force them to confront realities they'd rather ignore. Beautifully put, said one of the collectors. When will we see this new work? Soon, Lucienne answered for her. Brielle's setting up a new studio space where she can work without distractions. Several people laughed, and I realized they all knew about the affair. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a public humiliation that had been going on for months. Small-town galleries can be so limiting, added another collector. Artists need room to grow. Exactly, Brielle agreed. Sometimes you have to leave comfortable situations to find your true potential. I felt that cold calculation settle deeper into my chest. They weren't just stealing my wife and sabotaging my business, they were making me a joke among my professional peers. Time to change the narrative. I pulled out my phone and sent a pre-written text to the gallery's technical staff. Emergency presentation needed. Authentication concerns with several pieces. Please set up projection in main gallery immediately. The response came back within seconds. System ready. Send files when ready. I looked around the room one more time, taking in the faces of people who'd known about my humiliation and said nothing. Critics who'd written favorable reviews of my exhibitions, collectors who'd shaken my hand while planning to move their business elsewhere, artists I'd discovered and promoted, now laughing at jokes made at my expense. Excuse me, I said, stepping into Lucienne's circle. I couldn't help but overhear the conversation about authentication. The group turned to look at me, and I watched recognition dawn on several faces. Lucienne's confident smile faltered slightly. Asher Bellamy, I introduced myself to those who didn't know me. I run Bellamy Contemporary downtown. Of course, Lucienne recovered quickly. How nice of you to attend, though I don't recall extending an invitation. Rhea Blackwood was kind enough to include me as her guest. I gestured toward Rhea, who was now positioned near the gallery's sound system. I hope you don't mind. I'm always interested in seeing how other galleries operate. Not at all, though I'm not sure our approaches have much in common. You might be surprised. I pulled out my phone. Actually, I've prepared a little presentation about authentication procedures. Given some recent concerns in the art world, I thought your guests might find it educational. That's really not necessary. Oh, but I insist. I sent the files to the gallery's projection system. It'll just take a few minutes. The lights dimmed, and my presentation appeared on the wall-mounted screens throughout the gallery. The first slide was simple: authentication, verification, and trust in the art world. As we all know, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the gallery's sound system. The value of art depends entirely on trust. Trust in the artist, trust in the provenance, and trust in the people who authenticate and sell these pieces. The second slide showed a photo of one of Lucien's featured pieces, a mid-century abstract that was supposedly created by a well-known artist who'd passed away in 1987. This piece, for example, is beautiful, but according to the artist's estate, it was never catalogued in his official works. In fact, the paint analysis suggests it was created no earlier than 2010. Murmurs began rippling through the crowd. Lucienne stepped forward. That's enough. Turn this off. I'm just getting started. The third slide showed email communications between Sienna and Lucien, discussing client information from my gallery. Let's talk about industrial espionage. The murmurs became gasps. I saw Sienna pushing through the crowd, her face pale. This is ridiculous, Lucien said. Security. Before you call security, I continued, let's discuss the most interesting part of this story. The next slide was a photo of Brielle and Lucien in our bedroom, taken from the security camera I'd installed 3 months ago. The gallery fell completely silent. You see, this isn't just about fake authentication or stolen business intelligence. This is about a coordinated effort to destroy my marriage, my business, and my reputation. Brielle stood frozen, her face cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been fear. The woman in this photo is my wife of 15 years. The man is Lucien Hart, your host tonight, and the setting is my home, in my bed, while I was across town meeting with investors. Someone in the crowd said, Jesus Christ. But wait, there's more. I advanced to the next slide, which showed text messages between Brielle and Jasper discussing their plan to take half my assets in the divorce. Apparently, the plan was to ruin me professionally and personally, then divide up the pieces. Lucien lunged toward the control panel, but Eli stepped into his path. I wouldn't do that if I were you. This is my gallery, Lucien shouted. You can't... Actually, I can. Margaret stepped forward, holding up official-looking credentials. I'm Margaret Chen from the Regional Art Authentication Board. We've been investigating irregularities in several galleries, including this one. The crowd was now openly staring, some people pulling out phones to record the confrontation. Based on the evidence presented tonight, along with our own investigation, we're suspending the authentication certificates for 12 pieces currently on display here. You can't do this, Lucien repeated, but his voice had lost its confidence. We can, and we are. Margaret gestured to two men in suits who'd appeared near the gallery entrance. These gentlemen are from the district attorney's office. They have some questions about fraudulent authentication practices. I advanced to the final slide of my presentation, a simple message that read, "The truth will set you free." Ladies and gentlemen, I said, I apologize for disrupting your evening, but I thought you deserved to know the truth about the people you've been trusting with your investments and your reputations. The gallery erupted into chaos. Collectors surrounded Margaret, demanding to know if their pieces were affected. Critics pulled out phones to call their editors. Artists who'd been courting Lucien's attention suddenly found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. In the middle of it all, Brielle stood alone, abandoned by the crowd that had been hanging on her every word just minutes before. She walked toward me, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. "You bastard," she hissed. "You've destroyed everything." "I've exposed everything," I corrected. "There's a difference. Do you have any idea what you've done? My career, my reputation. Your career was built on my connections and my work. Your reputation was based on lies. I just revealed what was already there." Lucien appeared at her side, his perfect composure finally cracking. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." Eli stepped between us. "The DA's office is very interested in your business practices, Mr. Hart. I'd suggest you focus on finding a good lawyer instead of making threats." As the crowd continued to swirl around us, I felt a strange sense of calm. The cold calculation that had driven me for the past week was gone, replaced by something lighter. "Ash," Rhea appeared at my side. "We should go." "In a minute." I looked at Brielle one last time. "For what it's worth, I did love you. For 15 years, I loved you completely. But love isn't enough when it's built on lies." "And what about you?" she shot back. "All those cameras, all this planning. How long have you been spying on me?" "Long enough to know who you really are." I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind 15 years of marriage and the wreckage of 2 careers. Behind me, I could hear Lucien arguing with the DA's investigators, Sienna crying as security escorted her out, and Brielle trying to explain herself to former friends who were no longer listening. The night air felt crisp and clean as we stepped outside. Photographers were still snapping pictures, but now they were documenting a scandal instead of a social triumph. "How do you feel?" Rhea asked as we walked to my car. "Free," I said, and realized I meant it. My phone buzzed with notifications, news outlets wanting statements, colleagues asking for details, lawyers offering services. But I ignored them all. The revenge was complete. The truth was exposed. And for the first time in months, I had no idea what came next. But that was okay. I'd spent 15 years building someone else's dream. Now it was time to build my own. 3 weeks later, I stood in my gallery, my real gallery, watching the last of the moving trucks pull away from the curb. The space felt different now, lighter somehow, as if removing the weight of deception had changed its fundamental character. The aftermath of that Saturday night had been swift and merciless. By Monday morning, every major art publication in the region had covered the story. Gallery owner exposes wife's affair and business partner's fraud in dramatic public confrontation, read the headline in Arts Weekly. The photos were less flattering. Lucien being questioned by investigators, Brielle fleeing through the gallery's back exit, Sienna in handcuffs. Lucien's galleries had closed within a week, the authentication scandal had spread to his other locations, and investors had fled faster than his lawyers could file damage control motions. Last I'd heard, he was facing federal fraud charges and had moved back to his family's estate in Connecticut to await trial. Sienna had been arrested for industrial espionage and theft of proprietary information. Her cooperation with investigators had revealed the full scope of the conspiracy against my business, but it hadn't saved her from criminal charges. And Brielle. Brielle had simply disappeared. She'd cleaned out our joint accounts, what little she could access before I froze everything, packed her studio equipment, and left town without a forwarding address. The divorce papers had been served by mail, along with a letter from her lawyer demanding half of everything we'd built together. My lawyer's response had been brief and devastating. The prenuptial agreement she'd insisted on 15 years ago, which protected her artistic work from any claims I might make, also protected my business assets from any claims she might make. She'd get nothing except her personal belongings and whatever remained of her reputation. Knock, knock. Eli appeared in the gallery doorway, carrying coffee and wearing the satisfied expression of a man who just finished destroying his enemies. "Please tell me you have good news," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The best. Lucien's plea hearing is next week. His lawyers are recommending he take the deal, 5 years for fraud, restitution to affected collectors, and a lifetime ban from the art authentication business. And the collectors who pulled their accounts from me. Funny thing about that? Turns out when people realize they've been manipulated, they get embarrassed. 3 of them have already called about resuming their relationships with the gallery." I walked to the window that overlooked the street, watching the city go about its normal business. "What about the others?" "The others are discovering that talent and integrity are harder to find than they thought. You'll get calls." "Maybe, maybe not." I turned back to face him. "Either way, I'm not the same person who started this. Better or worse?" "Different, more honest, maybe. Definitely less trusting." Eli studied my face. "Any regrets?" I considered the question seriously. The gallery was smaller now, my social circle reduced to people who'd proven their loyalty under pressure. My marriage was over, my wife was gone, and half the art world treated me like either a hero or a cautionary tale, depending on their perspective. "No," I said finally. "No regrets." "Even about Brielle?" "Especially about Brielle. I spent 15 years loving a woman who didn't exist. The real Brielle, the one who could plan my destruction while cooking my dinner, she's someone I never want to see again." My phone rang, interrupting the conversation. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Bellamy Gallery. "Mr. Bellamy? This is Sarah Chen from the Metropolitan Museum's Contemporary Acquisition Department. I was wondering if we could discuss a potential collaboration." I met Eli's eyes and smiled. I'd be very interested in that conversation. As I scheduled the meeting, I thought about the strange turns life could take. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a successful but complacent gallery owner, married to a woman I thought I knew, trusting people who were actively working to destroy me. Now I was alone, but I was also free. Free from lies, free from manipulation, free from the exhausting work of maintaining relationships built on deception. The gallery's front door chimed, and Ria entered carrying a bottle of champagne. "Celebration time," she announced. "I just heard about the Met Call." News travels fast in this business. The good news does. The bad news travels even faster. She popped the cork and poured 3 glasses. "To new beginnings." "To expose truths," Eli added. "To learning the difference," I finished. We drank, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine happiness. Not the careful contentment I'd cultivated during my marriage, not the grim satisfaction of successful revenge, but actual joy at the possibility of what came next. "So what's the plan?" Ria asked. "Rebuild the client base? Expand the space? Find new artists?" "All of that, eventually." I set down my glass and looked around the gallery space that had been my life's work. "But first, I think I want to try creating something instead of just selling it." "You're going to start making art?" "Maybe. I've got a lot of material to work with. Betrayal, revenge, redemption, the classic themes." Eli laughed. "Think you'll call it the Gallery of Ruin?" "That's not bad, actually." As evening approached and my friends prepared to leave, I found myself alone in the space that had been both the stage for my humiliation and the launching point for my revenge. The walls were mostly empty now, waiting for new pieces from new artists who would hopefully prove more trustworthy than my previous associates. But the emptiness didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." B. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Brielle could threaten and plot from whatever hole she'd crawled into, but she no longer had any power over my life. I'd taken that power back the night I'd exposed her lies to the world. I turned off the gallery lights and locked the door, stepping out into the cool evening air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new people to trust or distrust as circumstances warranted. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was going home to a house that belonged entirely to me, to sleep in a bed that held no secrets, to wake up in a life built on truth instead of lies. The revenge was complete. The gallery of ruin had been transformed into a gallery of possibility, and I was finally completely free.